You don't want to be one of those people that regrets their move to here to Salt Lake City, Utah. I've heard of so many people that have moved here and 6 months later they're out because they didn't realize what they were getting themselves into and what they didn't know what to expect moving here to the state of Utah. I had somebody send me this video recently about the 10 reasons not to move here to Salt Lake City, Utah, and they wanted me to give them their opinion on it. And so in today's video, we're taking a look at this video and telling you all about it and what I think on these top 10 reasons of why not to move here to Salt Lake City, Utah. Let's get into it. And make sure you stay till the end because the number one reason why you shouldn't move here to the state of Utah is going to surprise you, and a lot of people don't know about it.
So you may know Utah has been the fastest growing state over the past decade, but can you guess why? Well, 2/3 of the reason is due to natural increase, which is basically the proper terminology for they're having a lot of babies. The other third is all the new residents moving here, mostly from California. Now Utah's capital and largest city is, you guessed it, Salt Lake City. Named after, you probably also guessed it, the Great Salt Lake, which, by the way, is like really gross, so don't go swimming in there. It's right here.
That's one of the things that I will agree with. I mean, the Salt Lake City, a lot of people hear about it. It's one of the things that Salt Lake is known for, but it's really not that great. I mean, if you live here, you'll probably go once and then kind of forget about it. It's not something that you'll go to frequently, and it's not a place that you're going to want to swim. So like I said, it's not going to be a place that you visit often when you're living here in Salt Lake.
On a map, and while most people who live here have probably gone in the Great Salt Lake at least once in their lives, they usually prefer to spend their time skiing, climbing, backpacking, hunting, and fishing in the acres of gorgeous nature just outside the city, which is probably one of the most underrated cities in America. Sure, Denver may get all the attention as the mountain city, but it's actually a good 45-minute to an hour-long drive away from the Rockies. Salt Lake City may be a bit smaller, but it's honestly just as beautiful, if not more. Downtown is literally right next to the gorgeous Wasatch Range of the Rockies, creating one of the most picturesque backdrops of any city. It really isn't hard to see why the Shoshone, Paiute, and Ute Native American tribes lived here, or why the Mormons joined them. Brigham Young led the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to the Salt Lake Valley after their prior leader, Joseph Smith, was killed by an angry mob in 1844. The city continued to grow up to its current population of 200,591 residents, and just over 1.2 million people now call the metro area home. Considering all the awesome things Salt Lake City has going for it, it's surprising that the cost of living isn't that expensive yet. But it also isn't perfect. So before you decide to head on over to the Jello-eating capital of America, be sure to watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Salt Lake City, Utah. Number 10. The homeless. So it might not be as bad as somewhere like Los Angeles or Seattle, but it looks bad. You'll find makeshift tent cities and homeless people pretty much anywhere you go in Salt Lake City. Surprisingly though, this wasn't always the case. From 2005 to 2015, Utah actually had a 91% decrease in homelessness thanks to their Housing First policy, which made sure there was affordable housing available for people experiencing homelessness. Unfortunately though, the number of people sleeping on the streets has more than doubled since the program ended in 2016. Now, there are a few reasons for this, but it's mainly from the increasing housing costs that low-income wages just can't afford, and the huge meth and opioid problem that Utah has. Salt Lake City is also the biggest city in the region, so many smaller towns from the neighboring states and the rest of Utah buy bus tickets to send their homeless population here, which is another reason why there are over 2,000 homeless people in the Salt Lake area.
Now, if you're new to my channel, my name is Marvin Alvarado, the Sneakerhead Realtor here in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I get calls and messages from people just like you every single day looking to make their move here to the state of Utah. And I love hearing from you guys. So if you're thinking about making a move here in the next 3 days, 3 months, or even a year from now, feel free to reach out to me. You can call me, text me, or email me. You can also book a call with me directly down below. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to helping you make your move to Utah as smooth as possible. Now let's continue with the video. Now, that's just one of the things to keep in mind, right? Any city or any major city is going to have a homeless problem. I wouldn't say that this is something that should deter you from making a move here to Salt Lake City, because there are parts of downtown Salt Lake City where you're going to see homeless people, and there's certain areas there's going to be more of a problem. But if you're living outside of downtown Salt Lake City or the suburbs, it's not something you see very often. Like I said, unless you're going to downtown Salt Lake City, so I wouldn't let this deter you from making a move here to the state of Utah or Salt Lake City.
Number 9. Winter inversions. Good old Salt Lake City, also known as Smog Lake City, because that's exactly what it turns into when winter rolls around. Even healthy residents are forced to break out the surgical masks to avoid eye irritation, coughing, and other side effects of the pollution. This is what the National Weather Service calls an inversion. It starts when snow falls on the ground, creating a cool ground layer, followed by a hot and steamy layer of smog, which is then sandwiched in by another layer of crispy cold air in the sky, and voila! You've got a stinky, spicy smog sandwich, which is made even worse by the Wasatch and
This is something that I've talked about in some of my other videos. The smog here, or the inversion, can be a big problem for a lot of people. And I've actually talked to a lot of people who, for this specific reason, have avoided moving to Salt Lake City just because they have health problems, and it's something that they don't want to have to deal with. But this is mainly just a problem here in Salt Lake City because we're in the valley. If you want to move to other parts of here, the state of Utah, it's not going to be a major issue, like Park City, or even up higher elevation outside of the Salt Lake Valley. This is something that's not going to be an impact to you. So just something to consider.
mountain ranges that block the wind from clearing out the smog and thus trap all that pollution in the city. Salt Lake City's air quality is actually so bad that even much bigger cities like Chicago and Dallas have much better air quality. But on the bright side, at least Park City's only a 40-minute drive away if you want to actually see the sun during the winter or get a tasty breath of fresh air. Number 8. It gets hot in the summer. If you thought the winters were the only time you'd have to worry about bad air quality, think again. The summer ozone levels are so high here that the pollution is still almost as bad as it is during the winter inversions. Like I said earlier, there's practically no wind thanks to those dang mountains, and the 4,300 foot elevation means the sun will literally eat you alive. Mix all that up and you get 90 to 100 degree days during the summer month.
Yeah, so during the summer it can get really hot here. So make sure you're wearing sunscreen if you're going to be out in the sun. Make sure you stay properly hydrated. There's some days where it can get over 100 degrees, and it's just it gets very hot, especially if you're outdoors. If it's something that you want to avoid, then you want to stay somewhere where you're nice and cool with an AC. But a lot of people do enjoy that warm weather. They like to go up hiking. They want to be able to take advantage of that. If you want to, enjoy the outdoor activities, and stay a little bit on the cooler side, you can go up in the mountains. There's reservoirs that you can take advantage of. There's tons of different swimming pools here in the Salt Lake Valley, also splash pads. So there's different things you can do to stay cool during the summer, but it does get hot, and make sure you stay protected.
Don't forget your chapstick, lotion, and a lot of sunscreen, because premature aging and skin cancer are a serious problem here. I don't know what it is exactly, but the higher up you go, the stronger the sun's rays are, and Salt Lake City's high elevation means there's less moisture in the air, making the climate extremely dry. Utah's actually the second driest state in the country, and it's only getting drier since the Great Salt Lake continues to dry up. Speaking of dry, though, Number 7. Liquor laws. Utah has some of the strictest drinking laws in the nation. There are a lot of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here, and as you can guess, the church is really against alcohol. So they make it pretty dang difficult to get your hands on it.
This is one of the things that people don't necessarily agree with or are aware about before making a move here to Salt Lake City is that, Salt Lake is not a party city, so alcohol, you do have to go to the liquor stores to be able to purchase that. So you can't really go to the local grocery store or Target and pick up alcohol there because it's not readily available. You have to go to the state liquor stores in order to be able to purchase it. So the liquor laws are something that people do have an issue here. But depending on where you are in your life or your personal situation, like I said, if you're looking for a party city, then Salt Lake is not the place for you. But just something to be aware about when it comes to the liquor laws here in the state.
Are only allowed to sell drinks with less than 5% alcohol, which might sound low, but it's actually an improvement on the 3.2% limit they had before November 1st of this year. And if you want anything stronger, you're gonna have to go to an overcrowded, overpriced, state-run liquor store that's almost always limited in its selection, but you'll just have to learn to deal with it because that's about the only way you'll be able to get your buzz on. Sure, you could try at a restaurant, but since they're only allowed for 30% of their sales to be alcohol, you're gonna have a lot of rules to follow. You can only buy a drink if you also purchase food, and your table is only allowed one drink at a time per person. No liquor above 5% is allowed to be served past midnight, and no liquor at all is allowed past 1 a.m. Now, the good news is that the 4,300-foot elevation means alcohol will affect you a bit faster here, so you aren't going to need to drink nearly as much to be able to feel it. But honestly, is it even worth it after all the hassle? Number 6. The church controls the state. The alcohol laws aren't the only thing influenced by Mormons. In fact, everything is influenced by Mormons. The church funds a lot of the politics in Utah, and most of the people in office are LDS, so there isn't really a separation of church and state here. Now, if you're a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this is probably great for you. Otherwise, it just feels like the government's trying to baby its residents, thus limiting access or making it more difficult to do anything that they deem to be bad for you. Although Salt Lake City itself is only around 20% LDS and is actually pretty progressive with tons of hipsters and college kids, it still has to follow Utah state law. This means everything in the city closes early, and by 10 or 11 p.m., the streets are
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the church does have a big influence here in the state. I will say that things have gotten better in the last few years, with obviously people moving here to the state of Utah and not everybody being part of the church. So a lot of businesses are opening on Sundays or staying open a little bit late. So I think things have changed on this side of things, but there still is a pretty big influence from the church when it comes to like the state and politics compared to other places in the country. So just something that you really have to be aware about when making a move here to Salt Lake City. But if you're moving to other parts of the state, like Provo, for example, you're going to see a major difference between Provo and Salt Lake City when it comes to like Sundays, for example. Everything is like majority of things are closed in Provo just because there is such a huge population of people from the church there. But Salt Lake City, it is getting better. It's not as bad as it was a few years ago. So you're going to be living a pretty normal life if you're living in the Salt Lake City area.
Dead. Even the bus stops running by midnight, which I guess is meant to try to discourage people from being out and about late, but most likely just encourages drunk driving since people are going to go out either way. Number 5. It's isolated. If you want to get away from all these weird laws by taking a road trip out of the city, it's not going to be very easy. Boise, the closest decent-sized city, is 340 miles away. Las Vegas is the next closest at 420 miles, and then it's 520 miles to either Reno or Denver. If you just need a weekend away in another city, flying is probably going to be your only option. But hey, at least Salt Lake's airport's actually pretty nice. Now, the positive to Salt Lake City being so...
The Salt Lake City Airport is really nice. It's one of the nicest airports I think here in the country. I've been able to travel to different places in the U.S. And I will say that our airport here, we are spoiled by it. It's something that if you haven't been here, the airport is something you have to check out for sure.
Isolated is that being so far from other cities means it's so close to so much gorgeous nature. Utah is honestly one of the most beautiful states in the country, and there are tons of national parks and forests nearby, so if nature's your thing, you'll love living here. Well, unless you also love swimming. Salt Lake City is far from the ocean, and the Great Salt Lake isn't exactly the most desirable swimming location. Now, you might see Utah Lake isn't that far from the city, but it's full of toxic algae, so don't even think about it.
Yeah, so when it comes to Yeah, so when it comes to swimming, you're not going to swim at the Utah lake. You're also not going to swim at the Great Salt Lake. But there's tons of other reservoirs that are just, from 45 minutes up to a couple hours away, depending on where you're looking for. Bear Lake, which is about 2 hours from Salt Lake City, is a great place. You have also Pineview Reservoir, which is over in the Ogden area, and then you have over a few reservoirs over just on the other side of Park City. So don't worry about finding places to enjoy. There's plenty of places here within just a couple hour or 1 hour drive, so you're not going to miss out.
Number 4, you need a car. Now, Salt Lake City itself is only 111 square miles, so things are fairly walkable and definitely bikeable due to all the bike lanes, especially if you live downtown or near the university. It's a whole different story if you live anywhere else, though. The entire metropolitan area is 7,684 square miles, and the streets can literally be 8.
Yeah, I mean, if you are moving somewhere that's not a major city, like New York or maybe even Los Angeles, you are going to need a car. So I think most people that do move here have vehicles or a way to get around. So this shouldn't be much of a shock, but it's something that you need to be aware of.
12 lanes wide. And although public transit is improving, it still has a long way to go. Pardon the pun. You, my friend, are going to need a car if you live here. If you live in the suburbs, it could take you anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to get to the city with traffic. And if you're one of the many people who live even further out near, say, Ogden or the Provo-Orem area, it'll take you 30 to 45 minutes without traffic, since the whole greater Salt Lake area stretches over 20,000 square miles. The good news is traffic won't get in your way most of the time apart from the rush hours, but even those usually don't last longer than an hour. Salt Lake City really doesn't have much traffic compared to other similarly sized cities. Maybe it's because of all those lanes that they just won't stop building. But then again, there probably wouldn't be any traffic if it weren't for all the construction. Which brings me to my next point.
There is a lot of construction here in the state of Utah or Salt Lake City. There's a lot of things that are always changing or they're trying to improve. So just something to keep in mind that you're going to see a lot of construction here when it comes to the Salt Lake City area.
Every time I've ever driven in Salt Lake, it's either winter or there's construction going on. Or it's winter and there's still construction going on. They're literally always doing construction on the freeways and the main roads in the Salt Lake area, and I really do mean always. The roads are actually pretty decent too, especially for a city of its size. So it doesn't make much sense that there's so much money being spent on construction. It's like they just constantly redo the roads for the heck of it. I mean, I get it if there were a lot of potholes or if there was a ton of traffic requiring the roads to be widened, but like I just mentioned, Salt Lake City has relatively little traffic for how many people live here, and actually has a surprisingly low number of potholes for a city that gets so much snow. Maybe they should spend some of those tax dollars on the public education instead, because they certainly aren't paving the road to success there. Number 2, bad schools.
Yeah, so when it comes to schools, I mean, there's different areas here that are going to be better than others. I do have another video that I'll link down below when it comes to the school districts and some of the better school districts here in the area. So make sure you check it out. I'll link it down in the description below.
Poorly spent tax dollars. Utah's teachers are some of the lowest paid in the entire country, and their 23-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio is tied for the worst in the United States. Not only do they skimp on salaries, they also spend the least amount of money per student each year at just $7,179, as opposed to the national average of $11,392. The teaching methods are also very narrow-minded, not really accounting for special needs, and there aren't many extracurricular activities available, so students are usually limited, which is really bad for a place with so many young people. Number 1, expensive and rising home prices. Remember how I mentioned that a ton of Californians are moving here? Well, they're also bringing their expensive home prices with them. The average home in Salt Lake City was under $200,000 in 2012. Now it's over $420,000, and that number is only going up. This, of course, means that rent prices are increasing too, which is one of the main reasons for the homeless problem I talked about earlier. 5 years ago, the average rent of a 2-bedroom apartment was around $950.
Well, I mean, there you have it, right? So one of the things that is a major problem, or like that's one of the things that people don't know about, is that the housing costs have increased significantly over the last few years with so many people moving here. So you're not going to come in here, find a house for $200,000 like you would, 5-10 years ago. So housing is one of the major things that people aren't aware about it, and they're surprised when they come here to the state of Utah and are planning to making a move here, planning to purchase a home, is that their money doesn't go as far as they used to in the last 5 to 10 years. And that's one of the major reasons that people move out here out of the state, is because they either A, can't afford a house, or they just can't afford a house the size that they need, right? But I hope this information has been helpful, and these are some of the top 10 reasons of why people avoid moving here to the state of Utah and they're not aware about. But if you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the comments, and make sure you check out some of these other videos where I talk about everything you need to know about living here in Salt Lake City, and everything you need to know about the state of Utah and the Salt Lake City area. I'll see you on the next one.